Hello everyone, welcome. You're listening to Pushkar Carlotto's music podcast. There'll be two versions uploaded, and one will be only audio track, and the other one is going to be with video and the score if you'd like to follow it on my YouTube channel, Pushkar Carlotto. Today we're going to talk about the apparently incomprehensible music of Arnold Schoenberg, in particular his small piano piece Opus 19 number 1. This is an analysis, but not really an analysis. This is something for the listener who wants to appreciate a new type of music but doesn't have musical knowledge. And so what I will try is bring forth all this intricacy of this piece of music without necessarily you having to know anything about music, but just your ears and your attention and an open mind to looking at things and listening to things in a very different way. So I hope that at the end of this presentation you're going to be able to appreciate this music, its colors, its gestures, its form, and its expressive content. But before we start, I would like to present to you Schoenberg. He was an Austrian-born composer in 1874 and died as an American citizen in 1951. And he is considered one of the most influential composers of the 20th century because he came about a new system of composing music, which is what we're going to look at today, which they called atonal music, and he preferred the term pantonal music. Anyway, it's a system of composing with the 12 notes of the scale. But without relating to one central tone. There's another very interesting thing that I like to mention about Schoenberg is that his use of tones, the way he puts them together is like a painter. In fact, he was also a painter. It is this thing that later on in one of his pieces, Opus 16 number 3, Summer Morning by Lake, is where he uses this texture called the Klangfarbenmelodie, which is color, sound, melody. It's very beautiful. It's just this sounds that are coming in and out, instruments picking up certain notes and other instruments picking up the same note and giving this changes of timbre, which gives changes of colors, but then again also changing little by little the notes. So he creates this atmosphere. The piece lasts about 4 minutes long, and it's just a jewel on this way of creating music and something that later on is used in computer and electronic music. Before we go into the details of his way of composing, which I'm going to express in terms that everybody can understand, we're going to look at it without really analyzing it, though I will bring out the melodic and harmonic relationships that are there with the tones, which I think can also be very helpful for somebody listening to the music. We also have to note that when this piece was composed, these 6 little pieces, Opus 19, it was 1911, and Schoenberg was part of a group that was called Der Blaue Reiter, which means the Blue Horseman, founded by Kandinsky and Mark, 2 painters. And the whole proposal of this group, which was in consonance with Expressionism, which started in Germany. And I think it's very interesting to note that what was part of this ideology of the Expressionism. Some of the currents were socio-political, some other currents were mystic philosophical, but they all came under one humanitarian and anarchic radicalism. These people were rebelling against the materialism of the capitalist liberal bourgeoisie, and they wanted to come back to the basics of humanity, free and more conscious of its own potentials. and possibilities. Now, this sort of anarchism, this sort of coming back to the individual, is somehow felt in the system that Schoenberg proposes, where each tone of the scale, and here we have 12 tones, becomes independent from one central single tone. And so there are certain rules that are there in a way. There are certain things avoided in tonal ways, as well as there are things avoided in formal structure. So instead of having some regular pattern of beats coming and repeating themselves like most musics will have, here that is also lost. So something very interesting about these 6 short piano pieces that he composed is that he comes to, first of all, a music that is free from this one tone, and where the dissonances do not need anymore to be resolved, because there is actually no tone to which they need to resolve to. So this is what we call the emancipation of the dissonance, that the dissonance is left free. This sort of sound would have been resolved in this way, or it could have been also resolved in this. These are 2 ways of resolving this instability between these 2 tones, which in a tonal context would have been seen as something that needed to be resolved. But Schoenberg says, well, no, it doesn't need to be resolved anymore. This is just the sound, and it has a beauty of its own without needing to be resolved to a tonal center, because there's no more a tonal center. He takes this as a relation between these 2 sounds, simply as a color, as an expressive means of its own. The same if I were to do something else in other types of music. And that would have been resolved here. So this sound is just a relation between these 2 notes, and it has its own expressive means and its own beauty without needing a resolution. The sound itself has a certain vibration, and whether it's consonant or dissonant is actually very, very subjective and not at all objective. And he explains that in his harmony book that he wrote and published in 1911, the same year, where he goes against this principle that was so fundamental to all the conservatories of that time, that, you know, tonality is based on the harmonic series, which he says, well, it's not that, because all music is based on that harmonic series. But also very, very interesting about these piano pieces is that it is a music that is, it's a complete reduction in form and a concentration of means of expression, so short and so aphoristic. The motive itself is the melody, the sound itself is the harmony. It doesn't need to go anywhere, and if it goes, well, it's something happening, you know, like things that move in space and time, but related to each other. That concentration avoids any expansion of a discourse, and it is a search for the maximum expressive concentration in a very short space. In less than a minute of music, he gives you what could have been expanded in something of a few minutes long in a previous normal tonal setting. Okay, so if we listen to the first melodic line of this piece, the top melodic line, if we listen to this, we will hear that it is just made of 4 notes that are relating to each other. And it's very delicate, gentle. It doesn't seem at all harsh, right? And it even gives a sort of, you could say, well, here we can actually add something below it, and you would say, oh, well, yes, it is in a certain key, and here I could do this, and say, okay. Yeah, and you say, oh, yes. So it sounds so familiar. There's nothing very new about this melody, right? And yeah, well, it isn't. And if we listen to what then he does in the part that accompanies this, is this fleeting figures, and then we have something that is heavy and strong, but always very light in a way. So we have this, and we have this. So, I mean, if you see it, you say, okay, well, it's not music, but it has a sound of its own. It has a motion. It's like little particles flying around and being hit by light. And well, you can imagine whatever you want, but and so now when it comes together, it does this, right? And these are the last two sounds that you hear are this. Now you say, oh, okay, well, this is, in a lot of contexts, you would say, oh, but this is a dissonance and it needs a resolution. But no, it's just this colors and this sound itself that you're supposed to just listen to and relax in it. Just, I'll play it here. Listen. So I'm going to play again from the beginning. This is the first, we call it a phrase, and then comes this second part, and I'm going to play again the top line. And he writes on top a little hesitant. So it's very interesting. We have this, and then again I can put it in a context where you would say, okay, it's all part of one scale, right? So yeah, so when we hear it in this way, you say, okay, this is very familiar music. It's not, and but it's, if you really pay attention, he hasn't given you any sequence of notes where you can really say, okay, that is the tonal center, that is where all the notes are trying to resolve to. And so here it is again, and if you listen, it's just about this. So it has this opening, and then it comes, it's just these notes in relation to each other and free from this. It's just free from that. We have a complete relation with the notes with each other. He's not even giving you the possibility of having that feeling when you just play it. So again here. And then it goes on. So this, sorry, I didn't play the accompaniment to this second part. And we have this. So you see this. And actually, if you were to pay attention, it's actually the same melodic motion that is played much faster and in a different transposition, on starting on a different pitch. So now you say, oh, this is something new. Yes, oh, but is it really? Because it's interesting. Remember, if I were to play again the first part, the ending, and here we have this. It's the exact same three notes, and these are those things that you will subconsciously get in tune with, and you'll be able to appreciate the music by listening to it many times, which is something that also Schoenberg knew about, the possibility of recording music, and it was already quite perfect at that time. And so people will be able to listen to this many times. So these repetitions, these things that occur here, they are hidden, but they happen, and you then tune in. So here we have this part, right? Now this might sound a new material, which, yes, in fact, in the accompaniment, now he does this, so here we have that, and this. So these are taken here. I mean, you can try and hear it that way, but for sure it's taken here when he does it. So he puts it together, and now this is what is called a chromatic inflection. It's something that moves and opens and closes again back to its original form. So you can see it as some object that is expanding and then closing in, and he does that again at the end of the piece. And so we have this, and you see, and there it ends. But what we have together with this in the upper part, we have this. So and this is the final sound that happens here. You can tune in and listen to its colors, because that's all this music is really about in a way. It's this notes mixing together and how they create these colors. So the second phrase would be this. And then he continues. So this. Now here there are various lines going on simultaneously. So there's this one. Yeah. And short accompanying that is, so we have, yeah. In the left hand we have this. Again, something rising, something getting excited, something that wants something is about to happen, but it's still not happening, right? And to that we have this added to that, so left hand. And now all together. And now we go on. So this ends, this section ends, but the next section starts with this same pitch. This is in the right hand. We will listen to like little things moving, and then added to that other things. There's lots of objects going on, flying around or floating, or I don't know, and light and rays of colors coming in. Left hand. Then so we have this. And again. And I'm going to play now here. So all together. And now we have this something, a motif light that comes. Finally there's a rhythm that is coming in, a repeated rhythm, and with the right hand doing this. Nice. Now this section we have this things, lots of things happening, and so we have this rhythmic part. Then we suddenly have this trembling. And the melodic line goes on here, right? So that's where you pay attention to these. So we have this. And we have again another fleeting, all these fleeting figures that are coming in. And we have another one here. So one. And then we have this one. And all together. So I start from the very rhythmic section. Again. And it ends on this sound here. So you can try and make relations with these notes here. Somehow you can try and relate these. And this note here is like something that object stayed there, and now it's going to come alive and strong into this next section. So this next section has that, the last tone of that fleeting gesture. And we have this. And that's the end there, like that. So this comes together with an accompaniment, and I want you to pay attention first to the accompaniment of this melody. So again we have this. Beautiful, isn't it? We just have this sound, and then we have this. Again, these are just chromatic movements. So again here. And together with this line. So together. Now this note comes here at the end with this. And there's a chromatic inflection. So again, something that opens and closes back into its position. So this is a sound. And then. But under this, there's something else moving. No, it's not finished. The tune is finished, but something else wants still to move. And here is this one. So it ends with this color. when you listen to the whole piece, you try and see how all these things mix together. And I think it's really, really beautiful. There's a lot happening, but at the same time, you can really make these relations. The more you listen to it, the more you will be able to appreciate it. And all the other pieces, I think, are wonderful. The whole set of 6 pieces are really something quite magical and very unique. I really hope you have enjoyed. And please do listen to the whole set of 6 pieces on my YouTube channel at Pushkar Carlotto. Any suggestion for another presentation, you're welcome to leave any comment. I hope you're now going to enjoy listening to my performance of this piece, Opus 19, number 1 of Arnold Schoenberg. Thank you for listening. You have been listening to Pushkar Carlotto's podcast. Thank you, and stay tuned for more.